Hi guys, good to see you. Today we are going to talk about Ivan Boszormenyi-Nagy, and we're going to explain his basic concepts, actually two major concepts that I want to explain about him. The reason I'm doing this video about this amazing thinker is because a lot of videos on YouTube that try to describe his work and his way of thinking, I think lack a bit of context and broad understanding about the ideas that I'm going to discuss in this video, so it's very important to me to talk about him. Just a biographical note, so Ivan Boszormenyi-Nagy is an Hungarian psychiatrist. He started in psychoanalytic training and came to the US and became one of the prominent figures of family therapy. Not the most known figure, but I think one of the most important ones, and I'm going to try to explain why. First of all, in a broad context, what Ivan Boszormenyi-Nagy contributed to our thinking about family therapy and therapy in general is that he brought in the ethical component of therapy. And I just want you to think about it for a second, because for instance, when we think about the role of the psychotherapist, how much is ethics a major part of his role? So I heard this wonderful example from psychoanalytic literature that I heard it from Dan Kavarth, that he said that a psychoanalyst met a patient that was a hitman for the mafia, and the hitman told him that he wanted to do a better job. And lately he has anxieties about his job, he's not performing that well, and he expected the psychoanalyst to help him do a better job. Now, just think about this. What is the psychoanalyst's role in this situation? Is it to cure the patient and make his symptoms of anxiety go away? Or is it to have an ethical role here and maybe telling the patient, look, you're doing something not so good with your life. It doesn't seem an ethical thing to kill people just for the sake of money. So in Boszormenyi-Nagy's perception, these two concepts of doing good therapy and being ethical are not in contradiction to one another, but they merge because in his opinion, we really can't have a good emotional life if we're not ethical with other people and we don't have ethical relationships. So he put a lot of emphasis on ethics. He thought that ethics is a more important subject in therapy than things like attachment or the inner world of the patient. Really, he thought that what the person actually does in his relationships are an important subject, the most important subjects to mental health. And actually, it's not surprising that he thought that way, because there's a huge difference, I think, between a personal therapist and a family therapist, which Boszormenyi-Nagy was a family therapist, because in a private session with a client, let's say, I can ignore some of the things that the patient might say to me that seem a bit off ethically. So let's say the patient comes to me and he gives me his side of the story. So obviously I'm more attuned to his side, and in a natural way, I will feel more comfortable reflecting his emotions, embracing and affirming his point of view. But if you're doing a family therapy session, or a couples therapy session to that matter, then you can't ignore the other side in the story. You can't have a one-sided narrative and just embrace it and affirm whatever the person tells you, because there's the other side in the room telling you his side of the story. So the question is, who is objectively right has a lot more weight in a family therapy session than in a personal session, because there's an objective reality in the room represented by two different points of view that need to come to some sort of understanding of what reality actually is. Now, this is a very complicated question. I'm not gonna, this video can't serve the purpose of going into it completely of how much objectivity is important in the therapy room, but it is very important to mention it, because when it comes to Boszormenyi-Nagy, this is I think this is, one of his biggest contributions, and maybe in another video we'll go deeper into this question. However, in this video I want to explain Boszormenyi-Nagy's perception in a more general way. So let's take one term that he has, which is very important, and I think all the videos on YouTube get it wrong when they explain his point of view on the subject. This is called loyalties. So Boszormenyi-Nagy wrote a book called Invisible Loyalties, and in this book he explained that loyalties, invisible loyalties, unconscious loyalties, is a huge factor in a man's mental health and what really determines a lot of his conflicts in life and a lot of his symptoms. Basically meaning that if someone has a strong symptoms, it's usually because there's a conflict of loyalties in his life that he doesn't know how to solve. So for instance, let's say I grew up in a very religious family with religious values, so I have a natural loyalty to my parents and to the way they brought me up. This loyalty is a blood loyalty, meaning that they brought me to this world, so in a way I'm in debt to them, and this can all be unconscious, but I have a very strong loyalty to their upbringing. And on the other hand, maybe I myself don't have religious tendencies. So now I've got a conflict between loyalties to myself, to my own set of values, and loyalties to my family. This loyalty to the family is called by Nagy a vertical loyalty. He contrasts that to other kinds of loyalties, let's say to my place of work, to maybe even my spouse. He called this horizontal loyalties, and it's horizontal because these are loyalties that I chose, and they're actually weaker in a sense than loyalties that I did not choose, like my family. And he said that we have loyalties not only to our parents but to our great-grandparents and to all the lineage of our family and our culture and our heritage. And I think today when we look at how prevalent is identity politics in societies, and like multiculturalism is becoming less and less of a factor, and people are sort of going back to their own tribe, let's say, own community tribe, I think that maybe it has a lot to do with these kinds of loyalties. Now, I think regarding this issue of loyalties, I think a lot of YouTube videos get it wrong about Nagy because they suggest that the role of therapy, as they understand it, is to get rid of these invisible loyalties. Let's say I have an invisible loyalty to my parents and their religious upbringing. A cure to my neurosis would be to choose myself, my own values, and to stick to them, and the hell with this invisible loyalty which causes my symptoms, my inner conflicts. If I can just cancel out this loyalty, I can live a free life from the control of the superego and the unconscious loyalty that I have to something that is not serving me anymore. And I think this is an inaccurate description of what Nagy said in these videos, because a more authentic description of what Nagy said is actually that he said that you do not have to choose one loyalty over the other in a very strict and harsh way, especially when it comes to loyalties towards your family and their values. He said you should learn to negotiate your loyalties, meaning that first of all you should be aware of your loyalties. So with this example of the parents, you should be aware that you have an inner loyalty to your parents. And it might not be a loyalty that you should go with 100% in your life and give up your own value system. However, it doesn't mean that you can totally cancel out and be free from your loyalties to your parents, but you can choose in what plane am I loyal to my parents, and in what plane of reality I am not loyal to them. And it's more of a negotiable situation, but the loyalty keeps persisting in your life, and according to Nagy, it's a healthy thing. And when I say healthy, what I mean is it becomes visible to you. The loyalty becomes a conscious thing that you are aware of, and therefore you can start negotiating its existence in your life instead of it being an unconscious conflict inside of you. So in this instance, I might say, okay, I'm loyal to my parents when it comes to respecting their way of life. I am not gonna be very vocal about the fact that I live a very different life. I will try to respect them when I come to visit them. and maybe I'll teach my kids good things that I think are in my tradition, but I will leave out the other things that I feel that are not in accordance with my value system, and I think that hurt me. And it's more of a negotiable situation. And Naj thought that we should be very, very careful about canceling out our loyalties to our family, our vertical loyalties, because it's something that we cannot really change. And also, if we go back to the ethical understanding of Naj, we are in what he called in debt to our parents. And that debt means that whether we like it or not, we have a certain amount of loyalty to them. And this loyalty, when it comes to mental health, it's something that is important to still keep in our lives. Now, it's important for me to mention this because there's a certain trend in the world of mental health regarding toxic people. So it started with toxic masculinity, and now it sort of broadens into this idea of toxic parents. And I saw some mental health experts, not really, because a lot of these experts are very good in personal therapy. They're not good when it comes to family therapy. Anyway, their advice, let's say, about if you have a toxic parent is to completely get rid of him. Disconnect connection with them, not be in connection with them, sort of wipe him out from your life. And I think this is a big mistake. I'll make another video explaining this mistake from Melanie Klein's perspective. But in this video, I want to explain the mistake from Boszormenyi-Nagy's perspective. And that perspective is that it's simply not ethical to totally cancel out people that you have a certain invisible loyalty to them, which has to do with the mere fact that they brought you to this world. And maybe some of them even fed you at a certain point. So with all the horrible things that parents do to their children, and I'm not saying that they don't, a good mental health solution is not to cancel out that relationship, but to negotiate it. And obviously, it has to be in accordance with the amount of hurt and trauma that they are currently producing in your life. So obviously, someone who was sexually abusive to his children deserves a different kind of debt from his child than someone who had a good childhood, but the parent didn't give him everything he wanted. And usually when people say that their parents are toxic, what they really mean is that they didn't give them everything that they wanted in life. Maybe I'm a bit harsh with that judgment, but I think that in certain population segments, certain age group, that is really prevalent, that perspective. And I think it does a lot of harm to mental health because in my experience, people who cut off their parents completely from their lives really are not more healthy mentally speaking than people who actually do the effort of keeping a connection with parents, even though that connection is not perfect and their parents might have hurt them to a certain degree on different levels. Now, this idea is connected to another term that Naj has, which he called entitlement. And he said that there's two kinds of entitlement, good entitlement and destructive entitlement. That a good entitlement is an entitlement that I feel for something good that I did, and I feel better about it. So my mental health becomes better. So if I'm a hitman that kills people for money, I will not feel entitled in my life. I will feel not good about myself, and my mental health will go down because of it, according to Naj. And destructive entitlement is when someone has a sense of entitlement for something that he didn't really do and is not deserving to feel entitled for. So if I feel very proud that I killed someone for money and I feel that I have a great achievement because of that, according to Naj, that is destructive entitlement, and in the long run it will have a price. It will take a toll on your mental happiness and mental health. So I think Naj is very important, and obviously you see the connection to parents, because obviously if you cancel out your parents from your life, can you really feel entitled to do that in most cases after your parents did the very basic thing of giving you life in this world? So a certain amount of debt is due in that area. But in a more broader sense, I wanted to demonstrate how Naj's ethical ideas are very, very interesting and important, because we have this tendency in therapy to say everything that we can solve in life is through inner introspectiveness, meaning that if I have a mental problem, I have anxiety, I have depression, so I'll start meditating, I'll observe my own emotions, I'll go over my traumas in my childhood, but no one mentions the fact that maybe you should look at how ethical your personal relationships are. And maybe the fact that you didn't call the girl you dated yesterday and told her in a very honest way that you don't want to date her, and you ghosted her, maybe that is unconsciously leading to you feeling not entitled in life, and because of that you feel more depressed. That would be actually an explanation that Boszormenyi-Nagy would offer. So this is just a general explanation of Boszormenyi-Nagy and a certain angle that I thought that people do not pay attention to when they talk about his teaching on YouTube. So I hope you had a good video, and thank you. Have a great day.